Democratic State Representative Julie Johnson of Farmers Branch, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. As you know, the Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade. Your reaction?
Well, I'm devastated, as are, millions of women across this country. It's a tragedy that the court has taken this turn and overturned 50 years of jurisprudence, really advancing our society forward. This is really a huge step backwards for the rights of women, for our equality and the rights to determine our own health care and our autonomy.
And so now, as you know, by August, I think, there will be a new abortion law in Texas that the legislature passed last year in this very scenario that the Supreme Court would overturn. And so I'm wondering, how concerned are you about the ramifications? Because it bans most abortions unless the mother's life is at stake. And doctors who perform abortions could be charged with a felony and face life in prison and face fines of at least $100,000. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Right. The Texas trigger ban that was passed, what it does is in 30 days, it will make effective a law prohibiting essentially all abortion in Texas, except with a very limited circumstance. So basically, at the time of fertilization, women are prohibited from accessing any abortion care whatsoever. The state is forcing Texas women to carry their pregnancies to term, which is unconscionable to me. I saw a thing one time that said, a 14-year-old we'd never allow her to legally adopt a child, but now we're going to force her to be a mother if she's raped or conceives without her consent. It absolutely makes no sense to me. So now, where do we go from here, right? Well, we need to educate women. We need to educate voters on how the impact of this is going to have on them. But we really need to start funding healthcare for women. Texas still has the highest maternal mortality rate in the country. And so that this law now tells me that we're going to have even more women die because they're not able to get access to the healthcare to have healthy pregnancies.
I was speaking with the author of the new abortion law, State Representative Giovanni Capriglione, and he says that he favors expanding services for prenatal care and obviously after women give birth, and for mothers and adoption services. So what's your thought when you hear that?
Well, it's interesting because we had a bill this past session that would have at least provided health care for women out to 12 months, expanding that. And it was voted down by the Republicans, and they limited it to 6 months. I carried a bill and had, bipartisan support for Medicaid expansion, which would have given women and children and fathers of children access to critical health care so that they could live and be a healthy life. And of course, the Speaker's office and the Republican administration would never, ever put it up for a vote. So, the Republicans all along have consistently refused advances to improve access to health care for women, children, and Texans as a whole. So it'll be interesting to see if they change their tune this upcoming session. But so far, they've done nothing that would indicate that they're going to do that.
There was also one Republican lawmaker, Briscoe Cain, has discussed, but I don't think it's too early to file a bill, about preventing companies and individuals for paying for a woman or women to travel out of state to have an abortion. Talk to me, what's your thought about that?
I think that's absurd. That completely limits people's free access. Unfortunately, what's going to happen is people who have access to economic means are going to be able to travel and get health care that they need in many of the states that value a women's right of autonomy, that value women's access to health care. And unfortunately, women that don't have access to the funding to do that are going to be forced to carry unwanted pregnancies to term and have, a variety of complications and problems in their life because they're not able to make the choices that are best for them. What are they going to do? Have us have to show an ID to leave the state or something insane like that, and really bring us down to a restrictive state, and really dehumanizing the role of women and our rights? I don't think women are going to stand for that, and I think we're going to see that this coming November at the ballot box.
I wanted to ask you about just the political consequences. Everything that we have known until now, as far as public opinion on abortion, has been under Roe v. Wade. I mean, at least for the past nearly 50 years. And so I'm wondering, how much of an impact do you think this is going to have on the November election here in Texas?
I think it's going to have a significant impact on the November election. Women are very, very upset. And, it's interesting because so many conservative women have reached out to me. So they want to meet me as their state rep. They've always voted Republican, but they have every intention of voting Democrat this upcoming November because they're so upset of the Republican Party's assault on women's freedom. It's a sad state where we are, but women are rising up. And it's one thing for people to believe, oh, they're never going to take a right away, or I'm never going to really lose my right to healthcare freedom. But that's exactly what's happened. And when they go to seek services and they go seek healthcare and they're denied and their rights have been removed from them, I think you're going to see a strong reaction.
Should we expect a flurry of legislation being filed by Texas Democrats to restore abortion rights in some form or fashion?
Oh, absolutely. We're going to file that legislation as long as Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick are in office, though it's not going to move. That's why these November elections are critical. And if you're upset about this abortion bill, make sure you're registered to vote and make sure you vote Democrat this fall.
All right, Democratic State Representative Julie Johnson of Farmers Branch, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Jack, thank you for the opportunity to be here.